Ich freue mich sehr, einen wirklichen EU-Experten auf dieser Bühne begrüßen zu dürfen.
I'm glad to welcome a real expert in EU affairs. This is Dustin Hoffman. He's going to tell us a little bit about the EU and its institutions. I think it is amazing that since 71 years we have peace for more than 300 million people in Europe.
Trotzdem entsteht eine unglaubliche Komplexität.
Nevertheless, there is a bunch of complex systems working together between these 28 countries in one union, and this has benefits and also negative aspects, of course. Dustin is going to explain us a lot about this, but nevertheless, this is one union and we have peace.
Hallo? Ja, sehr gut.
Hi.
Hallo.
Perfect. Hi.
Vielen Dank für die Einführung. Ich bin Dustin Hoffman.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm Dustin Hoffman. I am the head of office of Martin Sonneborn, German MEP, member of the European Parliament. I have a legal training and I have landed in Brussels quite a while ago. I am very glad that I can tell you a little bit about the European institutions now, especially because there will be elections next year. You might have heard a lot of things about this before already. It seems like this is going to be the deal breaker for Europe, this election. So I want to give you some broader picture about the institutions, and I am especially glad to be here to be able to talk to you because of the police laws that I heard about yesterday, and I noticed that a lot of you here in the audience have the same positions towards this politician, Herbert Reul, and I was the only person watching this video back in the days when he was a member of the European Parliament and had held an address about the State of the Union. When he became the governor of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, many people were surprised, but I was not. So, anyways, let's move on to the content. This will be a broad overview because I expect that you know nothing. So some of you might be a bit bored and it might not be interesting to you, but for many of you it will be interesting because I will give you a broader picture of all of the institutions that are part of the system of lawmaking, especially the European Parliament, and I will explain how laws are made in the European Union. Afterwards, I will tell you what was the message of this talk in the end. I want you to have a couple of terms in your head that you understand, because once the media will start talking about the European elections next year, it will be important that you know some of the words and their meaning. For example, there is one topic like copyright reform, which is part of the trilogue, and you should understand what trilogue means, for example, after this talk. So let's start with the institutions of the European Union. As part of the Treaty of the European Union, there are a bunch of institutions. There's the Parliament, the Council, and the European Parliament, the European Council, and the Council of the European Union, not to be confused with the European Council. And there you see the European Commission, the European Court of Justice, the European Central Bank, and the European
Ich will mich allerdings auf die oberen 4 konzentrieren, ganz kurz zu den unteren.
I want to focus to the top 4. The Central Court of Justice in Luxembourg, the Central Bank just for the stability of the European Union, the Court of Justice also in Luxembourg, and it takes care that everything's doing well.
Es sollen die ersten 4 sein.
So let's take a closer look on the top 4 and a special focus on those 3, because those 3 are the ones that are responsible for European legislation procedure.
Es gibt neben den Organen noch allerhand Agenturen.
Besides of those institutions, there are also a lot of other institutions. Just have a look at it to see that there are like plenty.
Das sind einige, die ihr auch kennt. Die nehmen
some of those are known. They do some special. They have special like Frontex, the European Police, Europol. Those institutions are spread all around Europe so that everyone can take share of the European Union. Those who are responsible for the legislative procedure, it's the European Parliament, the European Council, and the European Commission.
Und die Aufteilung der dreien ist so, dass die Europäische Kommission schlägt die Gesetze vor und das Europäische Parlament und der Rat der Europäischen Union
makes the proposals of the legislation, and then the Council and the European Parliament, they decide on each other how to develop those legislative procedures.
Findet zum größten Teil
most of the work is done in the nice city of Brussels. I'll take you on a journey to the capital of Belgium.
Belgien, Brüssel, bekannt für
Belgium, Brussels, known for many things.
Schokolade,
for example, chocolate, waffles, beer. There's a very good beer culture in Belgium. And the European Union. Unofficial, the capital of the European Union, where most of the institutions are located. I don't know who's been in Brussels before, but everything is very close to each other. This is the European Council. Next to it, there's the
genau gegenüber, auf der anderen Straßenseite,
just across, it's the building of the European Commission,
wo der Kommissionspräsident sitzt,
where the president of the European Commission is situated.
Dieses Viertel, in dem sich das hier befindet, heißt nicht nur grundeuropäisches Quartier,
not only known to be the European Quarter,
Gebäude, die hier sind,
but all the buildings are related to the European Union. There are more than 30,000 people working for the European Union, and all buildings that don't belong to the Commissions are used by agencies, institutions. Everything is European Union, and in the weekend there's nothing going on.
Ein bisschen gekünstelt, ist auch bestimmt mal.
So a little bit artificial,
sehr breit gemacht.
but we just spread around there. But if you walk like 10 minutes by foot, you reach the European Parliament, the European representation of the citizens.
Aber das genauso wie bei der Kommission, das beschränkt sich nicht darauf.
It's like the European Commission, it's not restricted to this building, there are also the rooms for trainings. We spread, and like all of you come to Brussels, go there on a Thursday night, because the working weeks of the European Parliament, the MEPs, members of European Parliament, they don't live in Brussels, but they just come there and stay until Thursday. They leave during the day. That is why there's this nice tradition in Brussels on this place, Platz Luxembourg. All the restaurants, they put some beer stands outside, and they're just like bunch of young people, thousands. They meet each week. It's very nice to look at. If you're close by, never forget to join on Thursday nights.
So, fange ich mit der Europäischen Kommission an.
So let's start with the European Commission. It's the executive of the European Music. There's like the quasi-government, but not the real government.
Die Europäische Kommission wird einmal am Anfang vom Parlament bestätigt und wird dann
in the beginning of the legislative procedure, the European Parliament confirms the European Commissions.
Das spielt eine ganz große Rolle, wenn ich euch später erkläre, wie sich die Abstimmungsdynamik im EP verhält.
This is a very important role to understand the voting procedure in the European Parliament. I'll come back to that later. What's very important is that the Commission has the only right for an initiative to start a legislative procedure. In Germany, the Parliament can put in some legislative procedure, but in Brussels they cannot do it. That's why some people laugh at the European Parliament. But we're not that far in Brussels. It's also known as the keeper of the contracts. So they check if some member states are not confirmed with the law. Then the Commission will take a look and
Ja, das ist die
might
Rolle der Kommission.
initiate
Die Kommission wird
procedure
geleitet
against the
von
member
einem Präsidenten.
state. It's led through the president of the European
dieser Mann.
Commission. That's this
Der ist
guy,
einigen
Jean-Claude
bekannt aus
Juncker.
unterschiedlichen Sachen, vielleicht einerseits als Kommissionspräsident,
Some people
andererseits
might know
wahrscheinlich
him
auch,
because he's
weil
part
er
of
im
the
Rahmen der
European
LuxLeaks-Affäre als
Commission, but he might also be
ehemaliger
known for the
luxemburgischer
LuxLeaks
Ministerpräsident in
because he was
Kontext
former
aufgetaucht
president
ist,
of
dass er
Luxembourg.
Steuerdeals mit großen Unternehmen
There were
gemacht hat.
like some
Aber er ist auch bekannt für
deals with companies.
sein Verhalten. Ich habe einen kurzen Clip mitgebracht von
I
Jean-Claude Juncker
brought you a short
bei der
video of
Begrüßung des letzten
Jean-Claude Juncker during the last
Ich weiß nicht, aber
Brexit
vielleicht kennen manche das schon.
meeting. Might be known to some of you.
Ja,
Yeah,
so machen wir das in Brüssel.
that's how we do in Brussels.
Also
You
es
see,
gibt allerhand unterhaltsame Videos von ihm.
there are like a lot of funny videos of him.
Videos, bei denen er den Staats- und Regierungschefs zur Begrüßung gleich die Backpfeifen verpasst.
There are some videos where he gives a kick to the other head of state. There's one video where he didn't realize the microphone was on when Viktor Orban was approaching him, and he said, "Oh, there's a dictator coming."
Es gibt unterschiedliche Gerüchte.
There are different rumors why he is.
Will ja jetzt auch, aber hier jetzt keiner vor so großem Auditorium
But in this, with this huge audience, I don't want to spread any rumors. It's what it makes them a nice person. The European Commission isn't only led by the president, but it's constituted of like commissioners from every member state. So every member state can send sends a commissioner to the European Commission. So the European Council makes a proposal for the president of the European Commission. The European Parliament can say yes or no, but it should reflect the opinion of the voters. Then the president will make a proposal with the commissioners from each member state. They will visit the parliament, and in some hearings they have to defend the questions of the European Parliament. So the parliament has to drill them and ask questions, and they will then confirm each commissioner. I presented to you Jean-Claude Juncker, but there are some that you should know, like Franz Timmermans. It's the vice president, or the responsible for foreign affairs and security policy. Günther Oettinger, known as well, it's the German commissioner.
Der ist ja verantwortlich für Haushalt.
He's responsible for budget and human resources, but as we all know, he started as the digital commissioner.
Da sein Erbe haben wir auch heute noch
his heritage, we have to deal with his heritage today. The restriction Article 11 for press and communication.
Also der Mann hat ja einer der Kommissare mit den meisten Lobbytreffen.
It's one of the commissioners with most of lobbyist meetings. He said, yes, nobody can tell me I'm not working.
Also er ist immer wieder in den Schlagzeilen, weil er irgendwelche Affären an der Backe hatte, wie das er irgendwie zu Viktor Orban mit Privatjet fliegt
Viktor Orban in his private jet. And in a hearing afterwards, he said,
dann wird man gefragt, ob man mitfahren. Ich sitze am Flughafen schon in der Zeitung, versteck mich, weil ich Angst habe, wenn ich ihn anspricht, dass es ein irgendwie intransparentes Lobbygespräch ist. Also ihr kennt es, immer hinter der Zeitung am Flughafen sitzen, nicht, dass jemand kommt, der einen Privatjet mitnehmen möchte. Das sind die Probleme, die Günther Oettinger hat. Aber deswegen wissen wir, in Politik gibt es auch gerade so ein bisschen Paradigmenwechsel. Heute bringen die Leute ihre Privatjets ja schon mit.
Some people just bring their own jets.
Vielleicht auch eine Frau, die jetzt
Another
nicht
woman
nur
that
Schrott,
you
sondern
should
hier unsere Wettbewerbskommissarin
it's
ist
our
vielleicht auch einigen Begriff.
Competition Commissioner.
Ist dann, dass sie es geschafft hat, wenn Wettbewerbsfragen, Wettbewerbs- und Kartellfragen allen Unternehmen in der Welt das Schrecken zu lernen. Also die,
she did the good job of teaching all the companies
auf der Welt,
that they should be afraid of European competition law. They're all like shrinking in their seats when they have to listen, when they hear about the German competition law.
Ich habe das eben schon mal angedeutet, die unterschiedlichen Räte.
There's also a bunch of different councils. So there's the Council of the European Union, the European Council, and the the European Council and the Council of Europe. So the first one, the Council of the European Union, is one of the co-legislators. So there's all of the specific ministers from the member states working on a specific issue. Then there's the European Council, which is when all of the heads of state get together. That's what you know from the TV, for example. And I live in that area where they meet, so like whenever that happens, I can't sleep because there's helicopters in the air all of the time. So they do not work on legislation per se, but they give like the guidelines. They make the big decisions basically. And then there's also the Council of Europe, which is a totally different organization. It's a European international organization with 47 member states, including Russia and other states in Eastern Europe. They work on human rights, that's where different member states meet. For example, the Charter of the European Charter of Human Rights is guarded by the Council of Europe. If you were, for example, in Tiflis before, in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, there's also European flags hanging around everywhere, but that's because the Council of Europe also has the same flag as the European Union. So that's also all quite confusing. Here you can see Donald Tusk. He's the president of the European Council. He's Polish, and he's coordinating, together with his general secretary, all of the meetings of the heads of state. And usually there used to be a rotation every half year, but now there's like one head of the council. Here there's the new building that they have there where they meet. It's beautiful. I like to show it for that. So back there's this egg-shaped thing. They have the facade made out of restored windows, recycled windows from all over Europe. Beautiful, right? So let's move over to the other council, the more important one. It's the Council of the European Union, and that's part of the legislative process, so that's where all of the ministers come together. They decide about the budget of the European Union. They have an important role in the treaties that the European Union takes part in for the member states, and also for economic policies and common agriculture policy and defense. It is not elected. It's kind of democratically legitimate because the people that take decisions there are sent from the member states, and those member states have elected governments, but like it's a lot longer chain of like responsibility compared to the European Parliament. There's quite a disbalance actually. So in this council, the presidency changes between different countries. So in the past, for example, now it has been Austria for the past half year, and next year it's going to be Romania for the next half year. And they look at, well, what's on our to-do list, what's on the agenda for legislation that we want to pass in the European Union. The quality of these presidencies is very dependent on those countries. Some of the smaller countries feel like this is quite some pride in like taking over this council presidency role, and they invest a lot of energy and time. Well, if Germany does that, then just like gets mentioned in the news, I guess. So here we can take a look at the next couple of years. Next up, it's going to be Romania. The expectations are not that high after all, but I mean, like with Austria, it was quite bad as well. Well, it's bad times. So the Council of the European
organisiert sich in
Union,
Gremien, muss man verstehen.
it has a bunch of sub-councils. They are kind of like committees in the parliament. So the one for the General Affairs Council is the one that is coordinating all of the things. It does everything that doesn't really fit into all of the other fields. For example, also constitutional things. It kind of works like in a parliament, just that it's ministers from the member states that come together.
Eine der fiesesten und schwierigsten Sachen
One of the hardest things about this is that there is a different way of finding majorities in the council than in parliament. You don't have to find 50% of the people there, but rather for easy things, for less important things, it's enough to find a normal majority, so 15 out of 28 member states. But for the more important things, you need a qualified majority, which is at least 55% of the member states that represent at least 65% of the population of the European Union have to agree. So there is a way for only 4 member states that represent 35% of the population to have a veto against everything. And as the Council is part of the co-legislation process with the Commission and the Parliament and has to agree to everything, it's really, really hard to pass any laws in the European Union without the support of the member states. With this complicated system, the negotiations between the co-legislators get even more complicated.
For instance, like if there's a new membership of the European Union, they have to be like with all the votes. So this makes everything very difficult, as all member states have very different interests in some areas. The European Parliament. It's located in Strasbourg. Now you might be surprised because at the beginning I showed you what it looks like in Brussels. So it's also located in Brussels and in Luxembourg.
Das hat historische Gründe. In den Verträgen steht nämlich, dass das Parlament 12-mal im Jahr in Straßburg
the European Parliament is 12 times a year in Strasbourg.
Das hat die Konsequenz, dass der ganze Trost, Brüssel ist der Arbeitssitz,
Brussels is the area of work, so the whole institution moves to Strasbourg twice a year. So we have like whole trains, buses, some people take the plane, some members of parliament come by car from the member states. The hotels raise their prices, and from Monday to Thursday there are all the sessions, and then everybody goes back. The problem is that the European Parliament cannot decide on where it wants to hold the meetings. It's within the constitution that they have to be in Strasbourg 12 times a year. To change this constitution, we need the votes of all member states. And there's one member state that's not at all interested in changing this constitution.
France. Deswegen ist es vollkommen egal, das Parlament hat in mehreren Beschlüssen gesagt,
this is why the European Parliament, they did in a lot of meetings, they decided they don't want to do this anymore. It costs like between 120 180 million a year.
Aber Straßburg ist eine schöne Stadt.
But Strasbourg is a nice city. It was in the media a few weeks ago, oldest Christmas markets of Europe.
Aber wir haben ja noch ein paar andere Institutionen, die habe ich ja
But we also have some other institutions. This is the building of the European
hier drüben ist der Europäische Gerichtshof für Menschenrechte. Die kümmern sich quasi um die Auslegung von der Menschenrechtskonvention. Also alles ganz nah beieinander.
Human Rights Convention. And you know the Court of Justice, they take the...
So. Habe ich schon gesagt, einzig direkt gewähltes Organ der EU, die einzig direkt gewählte supranationale
It's the only directly elected supranational institution of the world. It's co-constitutional.
Der Co-Gesetzgeber 751
There's
Abgeordnete.
751 members of parliament, 750
da steht
plus
noch
the
dran.
president
Ich sag
of the
gleich
European
warum.
Parliament.
Eine
say,
wichtige Sache beim
as of today,
Europaparlamentarismus,
I will explain that
Sitzverteilung
away.
erfolgt degressiv
You have to know
proportional.
that it's
Das heißt,
degressive
dass jeder
proportional.
Mitgliedstaat mindestens
This
6
means that
und
every member
maximal
state has
96
at
Sitze
least 6 seats
Es
and a
gibt
maximum
einen
of
Staat
96
mit
seats.
dem Maximum, das
There's
ist
one
Deutschland.
state with the
Und
maximum,
es
that's
gibt
Germany.
allerhand
There
Kleinstaaten,
are
Malta,
a lot of small states
die
like
haben halt
Malta and Cyprus that only have
das
6
ist
members of
nicht
parliament.
also nicht direkt demokratisch, weil
That's
eigentlich
not very
sozusagen jeder
democratic
Bürger sollte
because every citizen,
dieses Prinzip gilt auf der
like
europäischen
the
Ebene
vote of every
nicht. Das ist ein
citizen should
Kompromiss, hat man gesagt,
represent the same.
wenn man das wirklich nach
But
der
if we
Bevölkerungsgröße der
really would
Mitgliedstaaten
spread
auflösen
it
würde,
according
dann
to the
müssten wir
member
entweder ein
state
sehr,
size,
sehr
then
großes
the
Parlament
parliament
haben,
should be very, very
oder
large,
aber
or
die kleinen Länder hätten eigentlich
small
faktisch
countries
nicht
should
vertreten.
have like no representatives at all.
So ist man zum Schluss gekommen, dass Deutschland
That's why they
eure
concluded
Stimme ist
that
nicht ganz so
there
viel wert.
should
Sorry.
be a disproportional
Bei der nächsten
distribution of
Wahl
seats.
wird das Parlament ein bisschen kleiner.
In the next
wir
election,
März
the
davon
size
ausgehen,
of
dass
the
uns
parliament
die Stadt
should be
verlassen wird.
reduced because we expect that in
Dann werden
March
wir noch
one member state
705
will leave our union.
Das Parlament hat
So
sich
that means only
hat so ungefähr die
705
76 Sitze,
members
die
of
die Briten haben,
parliament.
so ein bisschen
All the
aufgeteilt.
seats of
Ein paar wurden
Britain
aufgeteilt an
should
Länder,
be
die
distributed to
benachteiligt
some
waren.
member
Deutschland nicht, weil es
states
ist ja
that were
Maximum schon, kann nicht mehr bekommen.
at a
Ein
disadvantage,
paar sollten
not
frei bleiben,
Germany.
falls wir die EU erweitern,
Some
und
should
ein paar
be
sollten
left empty
vorgesehen
in
für einen
case for
transnationalen
further extension
Wahlkreis.
of the European
Dazu
Union.
ist nicht gekommen, aber was
And
das ist,
some should be raised,
erkläre ich euch
but
im
that didn't
Kontext
happen. But I will
der Wahlen zum
explain
Europäischen
later.
Parlament.
In the
Euch
context of the
ist ja wahrscheinlich schon
European elections,
aufgefallen, dass ihr,
every
wenn ihr
member
in
state
Deutschland
is
wählt, für
responsible
das
for
Europäische
their own
Parlament, die
elections.
Parteien wählen könnt, die ihr sonst in Deutschland auch wählen könnt.
You
Das liegt
can
daran,
elect
dass die
the
Europawahlen nicht
parties
wirklich
as
europäische
you
Wahlen sind,
know
sondern
them
mehr so die Wahl der
for
europäischen
all
Nationen.
German elections.
Also jeder
This is
Staat
why
führt
they
die Wahlen selbst durch. Ihr könnt keine Kandidaten
There are no
aus Frankreich
transnational
wählen
candidates,
oder
so
aus
you cannot
Griechenland.
vote
Was
for
natürlich auch so ein bisschen
candidates
den
from
Effekt
France
hat,
or from
dass es für einen
Greece.
deutschen
As a
Europaabgeordneten
effect,
vielleicht nicht ganz wichtig ist, zu machen, also
a
Politik
German
für
member
Griechenland
of
zu
European
machen, weil die
Parliament might
können ihn
not be
nicht
interested
wählen.
in
Deswegen
doing
ist
politics for a Greek
das
member of
größte
Parliament.
Anliegen für viele Leute im Rahmen der europäischen Integration ist, endlich Transnationalisten zu haben, richtige
So
europäische Wahlen.
that's the goal of many people who are for
Die EU setzt für diese Wahlen
transnational
oben rechts an.
European
Das
Union
ist der
to have
sogenannte
like
Direktwahlakt.
transnational candidates.
Merkt euch das Wort, da kommt gleich noch
So
drauf
the
zurück.
European Union is the rough
Aber da
right
steht nur drin, wie es
framework
muss Verhältnis
doing through the
Verhaltenswahl
direct
sein, es sind ein paar,
vote.
grobe Fristen festgelegt.
There are just
Aber
some
es gibt
laws
keine
on timing,
europäischen
but there are
Wahlen.
no real European
Was euch über den
elections.
Weg laufen wird, sind die Spitzenkandidaten.
There's some
Das ist eine Sache, die hat
head
sich das EP ein
candidates,
bisschen
they are
erschlichen.
unofficial,
Und
and
zwar
that's like
habe ich am
something
Anfang
the
gesagt,
European
dass der
Parliament
Europäische
took
Rat
on slight
den,
step.
den Kommissionspräsidentschaftskandidaten unter Berücksichtigung des
As I
Wahlergebnisses
told you
vorschlägt.
before,
Und vor
the
2014 vor der Wahl haben sich die
European
Spitzen im Europaparlament zusammengesetzt und haben gesagt, pass
President
auf, wir
will
machen das jetzt
be,
so.
has to be
Wir sagen denen, dass wir
accorded by
nur
the
einen
European
Kandidaten
Parliament.
wählen werden, der
So
vorher
the Parliament
Spitzenkandidat einer
said
europäischen
we
Partei war.
only take
Um so Einfluss
the
darauf zu nehmen, wer
commissioner
Kommissionspräsident wird über
if
die
he's
europäischen
been
Parteien.
top
Und bei
candidate
der letzten Wahl waren die
during the
Spitzenkandidaten,
election.
zum Beispiel von der Europäischen Volkspartei war es Jean-Claude
During the last
Juncker,
meeting of the
von der
European
SPD
People's
war es
Party,
Martin
there was
Schulz,
Juncker,
von den
of
Grünen
the
Ska Keller.
S&D, there was
Und die sind halt angetreten
Schulz,
und dann kam es
and
Wahl
then
und
of
dann
the
hat das
Greens it was
Parlament
Keller.
gesagt, also die EVP hat die Wahl gewonnen.
But then the parliament came,
akzeptieren jetzt als
and the
Kandidaten
EPP party
auch nur
said
Jean-Claude
we
Juncker.
only accept
Das
Jean-Claude Juncker.
war zum Beispiel Angela Merkel war große
For
Gegnerin davon, die wollte das
instance,
nicht.
Angela
Und
Merkel,
es
she
ist
was
insbesondere immer
really
noch ein
against it.
Spannungsverhältnis zwischen
And
den
this is why
Institutionen,
there's
weil
still,
das Parlament sich einfach dieses nur so
some
geregelt. Die sagen einfach, wir
rough
machen das so.
tension between the institutions
Und
because
die
the
haben sich
parliament
dieses Recht
said we
erschlichen
just
und das ist
do
ein bisschen
it
so
this
ein
way.
Power Grab.
This
so
is
von
like
den,
our right,
von
but
den,
it's a right they
Regierungen weg.
just took
Und
on
ein
the
ganz
go.
geschickter Move. Mal
It
gucken,
was
wie
a
es bei der
smart
nächsten Wahl
move
laufen
of the European
wird.
Parliament.
Aber Spitzenkandidaten kommen nicht wieder, die ersten wurden auch schon gewählt.
So
Laufen euch wieder über den Weg. Parlament für 5 Jahre gewählt, anders als der Bundestag.
it's
Nächste
elected
Wahl
for
im Mai
5 years, different
2019.
to the
Und es
German
wird
parliament.
keine
The
Sperrklausel
next
geben für die
elections
nächste
are in
Europawahl.
2000 and there's no restrictive clause in Germany.
Ja. Jetzt habt ihr das Pech, dass Wahlrecht eins meiner Lieblingsthemen ist.
Now
Und
you're
meine Freunde hassen mich
yeah,
dafür.
you know,
Deswegen habe ich gedacht, wenn ich
like
schon mal hier bin
elective
und
law
ein
is one
größeres
of my
Auditorium
favorite
habe, dann
topics,
kann ich ein
so you have
bisschen
to sit
über
this
die
through.
Sperrklausel für
So
das
now I can
Europaparlament
talk a little
reden.
bit about the blocking clause.
Also bis
So until
2011
2011,
hatten
there
wir
was a
eine. Ihr erinnert euch?
5% blocking
Also,
clause.
da gab es eine 5%-Hürde, wie für den Bundestag.
as for the German Parliament, for the Bundestag.
Haben Leute dagegen geklagt.
And then some people went to court against this. For us in Germany, it's normal. Nobody is questioning this, even though it's not very democratic. You know, I'm against it.
Das Bundesverfassungsgericht hat sich das damals angeguckt und gesagt,
But the German Federal Constitutional Court said it's okay if it's necessary to.
Dann braucht man die auch nicht. Dann haben sie sich angeguckt, wie das Europaparlament arbeitet und gesagt, Mensch,
to make sure that governments can be formed, but like in the European Parliament, you don't really have to form a government, so like you don't really need it there. So there are already more than 160 parties in this, and it works together with the groups, and maybe there is no splitter effect because of this. So maybe we don't need it for the European elections. And suddenly it was gone. And there was a bad mood with all of the German parties. Maybe we can introduce a new one, maybe at 3% or something. But I mean, yeah, the logic of the court doesn't really care whether it's 3% or 5%, well, whatever. And the reaction of the German lawmaker was that they introduced a 3% barrier. And well, once again, the Constitutional Court said no, this is illegal. And that made the mood of the parties even worse. And this is one of my favorite statements from politicians in Germany. So the third point is that we have the least amount of members ever. But this is only to a limited degree our fault, because you have to look at it that the decision makers in the Constitutional Court moved away this barrier of 3%. This is the reason why there's NPD, ÖDP, and a bunch of other funny parties in the European Parliament. And this was a very bad decision of the Constitutional Court, of the highest court in Germany, and we have to deal with that as a lawmaker every day now. I still have the hope that after all, the judges will understand how hard it is now to come up with actual political solutions. So you have to think about it. The European Parliament must be dead now, right? Can't work anymore. So at least Herbert Reul, you see, he has been talking bullshit even before he was the governor of NRW. But anyways, yeah.
Also wir sind jetzt schuld, funktioniert jetzt alles nicht mehr. Also wenn Europa jetzt kaputt geht und zerfällt.
Well, it's not our fault. If Europe breaks now, it's the fault of the Constitutional Court.
Das Bundesverfassungsgericht. Ich dachte mal, die Wähler entscheiden darüber, wer in Parlamente kommt.
I always thought that the citizens decide who gets into the parliament. But no, not for the CDU.
Könnte man denken, okay,
so anyways, the 3% clause gone. So
akzeptieren wir jetzt?
Well, we might well assume that they would accept it, and but no, the Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the former foreign minister of Germany, said that he wants to have such a clause now on the European level.
Hat gesagt, na gut.
So, well, he said, okay, what can we do now? And he thought maybe we can get this on a European level. And after all, in November 2015, one of the very little things that the European Parliament can do on its own, it made a proposal for a new electoral reform. And the Council that can make a counter proposal to that. That doesn't have to do anything to do with the proposal by the European Parliament. And the European Parliament had a pretty useful proposal for some elective law, for example, voting with 16 and transnational lists and other important things. And that seems pretty cool. Maybe
aufgestellt werden. In einigen Ländern werden die 2 Wochen vor der Wahl aufgestellt.
Have to hand in the list of candidates 12 weeks ahead and not 2 weeks ahead, like it is in some countries. And then it went to the council, and it has to be decided by the council unanimously. So,
Entschuldigung, was ganz vergessen, Sperrklausel, dafür 3-5% war natürlich ein Vorschlag. Und damals, nachdem es im Parlament durchging, da haben wir Post bekommen.
So after that passed in the parliament, we got a letter.
Geschickt, was das Auswärtige Amt dazu denkt. So ein Dokument aus dem Auswärtigen Amt, was eigentlich
a document from the Foreign Office of Germany.
Was das Auswärtige Amt gesagt hat, habe ich mir gedacht, ach
Mensch, toll, let's look at how the Foreign Office. But they wrote to that. Well, they wrote the most important thing for us is that the European Parliament has.
Der letzte Europawahl 2014 darf sich nicht wiederholen. Deutsche sitzt schon bei 0,15. 7 Deutsche sitzen
is supporting a new clause at 3%. So. What happened next is that the council took a long time. We thought it was dead. The law, nothing is happening. And we are a party that is growing and growing, but one of the fears that we shared, for example, with the Social Democrats, is that we might not make it over the threshold if there were one.
Wir schon, Mensch, ja, vielleicht gut, beißen wir einen sauren Apfel, kriegen wir transnationale Listen, kriegen wir demokratischere Europawahlen.
When the proposal of the council came back, maybe we thought, well, maybe we get something back. Maybe there will be a clause again at 3%, but in return we get transnational lists and voting with 16 and so on and so forth.
Vertrag über die Arbeitsweise der Europäischen Union von Sven Hülscheid. Sven Hülscheid ist der leitet beim wissenschaftlichen Dienst des Deutschen Bundestages
the scientific service of the German Parliament, the constitutional service there, said, well, it would be okay if everything in this law gets dropped except for the clause at 3%.
Keine transnationalen Listen, keine Geschlechtergerechtigkeit.
And so what happened to the proposal of the European Parliament? Nothing happens, no e-voting, no voting with 16, no nothing except for this clause, this blocking clause at 3%.
Ja.
So everything that's good went away, everything that's bad is still there. And of course, the Parliament agreed. So
auch insbesondere der SPD-Mann, der das geführt hat, gesagt, super toll, Wahlen werden jetzt viel besser.
Social Democrat, for example, who was in charge of that proposal, said, well, it's kind of good, let's agree with that. And the thing is that every national parliament now has to agree to that. We thought, they're never going to make it until the next
bei der CDU haben sie gesagt, machen wir noch im September fertig. Also kommt auf jeden Fall, wir wollen das auf jeden Fall
so it doesn't matter for us. And then it came up in Germany, and
ihr braucht dafür eine doppelte Zweidrittelmehrheit.
The scientific service of the German Parliament came back and told them, well, we don't only need a normal majority, but rather a 2/3 majority in both chambers of the German Parliament. And they figured out, well, we don't even have a majority like that. Christian Democrats, Social Democrats, we're missing 6 seats. And they thought, well, the Greens might help us there. And the Greens were, no, we're not going to do that. On their party congress, they decided that they're not going to do it. That they think it is undemocratic at least to rush it like that. Even the people who are in favor of that say, well, no, we're not going to do it this quickly. And the end of this whole crime story is that a question has been answered by the responsible minister, Andrea Nahles, and her answer was, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to introduce this law before the next European elections, 2019. So, you know, there's a right to informational freedom, and you can ask for all sorts of things that the government is working on, like emails and letters and so on and so forth. And there are some quirks with that. You might not be able to request all of the content of all of these documents, but you have the right to ask for just a list of which documents exist. And out of this information, there might be some form of information that this has been dealt with by different politicians.
Es tut mir sehr leid, dass all der Aufwand, den das Auswärtige Amt da betrieben hat, all die Arbeitsstunden für umsonst waren. Aber so ist es mit der Demokratie. Hier ist übrigens auch noch unser EP-Präsident.
That's how it works with democracy. This is the President of the European Parliament, Tajani, and this is my boss, Martin Sonneborn.
Und Tajani, der ist hier nicht so bekannt wie Martin Schulz, aber
not that well known in Germany like the former President Martin Schulz, but he was the former press officer Silvio Berlusconi.
Haben nur die Besten bei uns.
And you know, we only have the best here in Brussels.
Ich erkläre die Unterschiede, also ich erkläre
so I want to talk a little bit about the differences between the European Parliament and the German Parliament.
Und zwar, weil die meisten Leute
most people know something about know the German Parliament much better. For example, they know this picture, but they don't know that picture. The one of Germany they know, and the one of Strasbourg they don't. And what you can see behind there, that's a bunch of cabins for the live translation, live interpretation, just like the one over here in this room, just a lot more. And we translate everything into all of the official languages of the European Union in 23 languages. This has the added benefit that it doesn't happen that we, like in the German Parliament, sometimes meetings go until 4 a.m. in the morning, but here that doesn't happen because the translator just don't do it for forever, and if they go home, everyone goes home. So one of the biggest differences here is you can see it here in the picture. There's small computers over there, and here in the German Parliament, no, nothing in the computers, nothing in the tables. Because we here in the European Parliament, we have an electronic system. This is from Julia Reda, and there you can see the final vote on the copyright reform. In the European Parliament, the last one we have there. And you might think, well, why don't we have that in the German Parliament? And after all, the thing is that there, the decisions are already pre-made. If there's no majority, nothing comes to a vote. But in the, for example, with like, there are some exceptions to this rule. So, for example, for same-sex marriage in the German Parliament, we also had a vote that was kind of free, and no one knew how the result would be. But in the European Parliament, that happens all of the time. We have a system of flexible majorities in the European Parliament. Some of the bigger groups work together somehow a little bit like the Grand Coalition in Germany. But in many questions there are different alliances that form just in time. For example, about budget issues, the leftists, they asked for, well, you know, all of the members of the European Parliament have a fixed amount of money they can spend on their local offices, and they don't have to really do any record keeping for how they spend this money. And the leftists made this proposal, well, why don't we do some guidelines that there has to be some records how this money is being spent, and suddenly there was a majority, also, for example, the Conservatives with the British Conservatives, they agreed as well. So the thing is, in the European Parliament, conservatives are conservatives. The German conservatives are very different from the British, for example. The Germans, they want to have some trust put in them, and like they don't want everything being checked. But the British Tories, they are very strictly in favor of transparency, and that's why they might as well work together with the leftists in some cases like this one. Can you remember Heiko Maas? Now he's a foreign minister in Germany, and back in the days he was very strictly against data retention. And suddenly then he turned into the Minister of Justice of Germany, and then he was strongly in favor of data retention. So there are some things that make it more the case that in the European Parliament there are democratic decisions.
Minderheitsregierung, Kooperationskoalition.
Minority governments,
das könnte zum Beispiel dazu führen, dass die SPD in Abstimmung geht, sagen wir mal.
This might lead to the fact that the SPD might go on a sign to circumcise pigs. But now we have a coalition. So each coalition has to vote in unison. For instance, a few years ago there was a case. Now we go back to Axel. Just have a look at it. It's similar to the German Parliament. It's not proportional.
Die Mehrheitsverhältnisse sind hier nicht original
the majorities are not represented proportionally, but we have the left, we have the SD, we have the Greens.
Eine grüne Fraktion. Den deutschen Grünen, da sind aber ist auch zum Beispiel Julia Reda von den Piraten mit drin, von der ÖDP, Liberale bei der letzten Europawahl, da war die Welt noch in Ordnung.
Last elections, everything was in order.
Die FDP in die Fraktion. Die Europäische Volkspartei, die Fraktion der Europäischen Volkspartei mit der deutschen CDU, CSU, was nicht immer alle wissen, die im Europaparlament sitzt die deutsche CDU mit der Fidesz-Sprecher von Orban in einer Fraktion.
Is in the same party like the party of Orban. This is why he's always a visitor at the
CDU. Dann rechts davon gibt es die ICR. Das ist eine Fraktion, die hat sich ursprünglich aus der EVP ergeben, da sind die britischen Tories drin. Die sind so konservativ, Mensch,
with the British Tories, they're like EPP, you're not very Europe-friendly. Then it's getting a little bit crazy. It's the EFDD. It's the biggest delegation.
UKIP um Nigel Farage.
In this
hat einen gewissen
group is the group of Nigel Farage. They're very successful at the moment.
Unabhängigkeit. Großbritanniens.
Independence of the UK.
Warten wir erstmal im März ab, vielleicht wird es ja doch noch Erfolg sein. Naja.
Well, let's wait for
auf jeden
March.
Fall, da ist auch noch die Fünf-Sterne-Bewegung aus Italien mit drin.
Also das wirkt ein
bisschen komisch ist es auch, weil die politisch eigentlich gar nicht viel gemein haben. Also das
because they don't have anything in common.
Die haben mir mal verraten, die wurden da so ein bisschen reingequatscht.
But they told me they were just told into joining this group.
Da haben wir noch eine rechtsradikale
Then we also have a right radical group.
ENF. Hat sich ursprünglich gegründet aus so Marine Le Pen,
by people like Marine Le Pen, Front National,
FPÖ, Partei für die Freiheit, Gerd Wilders, Leute, das versammeln sich da. Das ist leider eine Fraktion, die momentan in aktuellen Wahlprognosen relativ großes Wachstum vorausgesagt wird.
Like it's expected they grow a lot.
Es wird ja offenbar auch ein bisschen salonfähiger, was man hier nicht vergessen darf.
But we shouldn't forget that
die Rechtsradikalen hier
and the right radicals
können ja unproblematisch in Österreich eine Regierungskoalition bilden. Ja,
might make a government coalition in Austria.
Das ist hier besonders fies, sind gar nicht so viele, das sieht hier nur so viel aus, weil
it looks like they're a big group, but this is the members without.
Das sind die Leute, die keiner haben will.
Those are the people that nobody wants.
So Nazis von der Goldenen Morgenröte aus Griechenland.
Nazis
zwei griechische Kommunisten, die dürfen nicht nebeneinander sitzen. Ich glaube, eine Auseinandersetzung. Das ist kein Witz.
They're not allowed to sit next to each other, not joking.
Politische Auseinandersetzung auch noch
but
anders. Da sind ungarische, wir haben ungarische Antisemiten. Wir haben Udo Vogt von der NPD da. Und uns.
And there's us.
Das hat zur Folge, also ich kann das so sagen, wenn ich jetzt in Brüssel unterwegs bin und Leute kennenlerne, die nicht aus Deutschland kommen, sage ich so,
when I tell them I'm from Germany, they're like, oh yes, which group are you belong to?
Und,
and I say, not in a group, and I say,
manchmal gehen die Leute auch weg. Nein.
Well, no, Nazis.
Hier, ich wollte es der Korrektheit halber ganz kurz hier noch
anzeigen. Just to be complete, yeah, I wanted to show the real percentage of each group.
Haben wir gar nicht viele gerade, es sind 23,3%.
Well, without group, it's only 23%. It looked a little bigger than it actually is.
Ganz kurz,
the EU legislation procedure.
Gehen wir die mal ganz kurz durch.
Let's have a short look at it. There are two important
Verordnungen und Richtlinien.
their directives and their guidelines.
Eine eurer Lieblingsverordnungen, von denen ihr quasi, mit denen ihr kürzlich in Verbindung wart.
Some of the directives that you
Das Verordnung macht aus, dass sie über nationalem Recht stehen.
Directives are
und unmittelbar gelten und verbindlich sind.
So the first group is the regulations, which is immediately gets placed into law. So once it is agreed by the co-legislators, it is the legal standard for all of the European Union. The other thing is the directives, which are guidelines that the national parliaments then have to turn into national law. So as long as the national parliament hasn't taken it over yet, it is not legally binding. So first the Commission comes up with a proposal, and then both the Council and the Parliament discuss it on their own, and then they come together, and if they both agree to the same version, then it is passed in the first reading, and if that doesn't happen, then it goes back to discussion, and then the second one, and so on and so forth. But practically, this doesn't really happen, because there is this custom system that has a system that is called informal trilogue. So we cut away the rest, and when the Commission proposal comes into the Parliament comes up with things that they want to change about this proposal, and then they go to the Council, and they come together in this informal trilogue.
Und beraten dann darüber, wie sie das finden. Wenn sie dann zum Ergebnis kommen, ist es direkt
discuss what they want to put into this, and then it gets into first reading, and then it's over. That has some benefits. For example, it's fast. It is discussed and moderated by the Commission, but one of the downsides is that it isn't open to the public. So, like, you know when it happens, but you don't know what is happening behind those doors. There's no protocol or anything. Some things are being published nowadays because some people have sued ravenously against this institution, and there is one thing called 4-column documents. So, for example, this is from Julia Reda about the copyright reform. This is our favorite article, Article 13 about upload filters. And here in the first column, this is what the proposal of the Commission looks like. Then in the second, what the Parliament wants to have. The third one, what the Council wants to have. And the fourth one is what they are currently compromising about. And someone has sued the institutions about, to make this public. But the Council was strongly against this. But finally, now it is the case that when you ask for these documents to be published, they have to hand it out. And that is a very important victory for informational freedom.
Ich wollte jetzt das mal ganz kurz an einem Beispiel erklären.
So I want to use an example, for example, copyright. So Julia Reda, she was in charge of the European Parliament report. So we don't have the possibility to make a proposal, but we can make a report to tell the Commission, well, this is what we would like you to propose. And then the Commission comes around with a proposal, and then it is moved into the committee that is talking about the specific issue in the European Parliament. So in this case, it is the Justice Affairs, Legal Affairs Committee. And then there's also, then they come up with their opinion about that. And there's a bunch of important people there. There's the rapporteur, and then there's the shadow rapporteurs. Sometimes this is mentioned in debates or in the public, this term. So if you want to look this up, you can go to the website of the European Parliament, and here you can see who are those people. And so in this case, the rapporteur is Axel Voss from the European People's Party, and then you see from all of the other groups who is responsible for this file. And the rapporteur tries to come up with some form of text version that comes up with a majority in negotiations with the shadow rapporteurs. All of these things are transparent in the European Parliament, so you can look that up on the website. It is a giant page with all sorts of things. You can see all of the reports from committees, you can see all of the changes being proposed, and well, then finally it comes to a vote in the committee, and with the majority in this committee, the committee can already decide that informally we start discussing this in the trilogue together with the council. So, for example, in this case, Article 13, Article 11, upload filters, and ancillary right for press publishers, both of these things are in this proposal, and the committee decided to start negotiations with the council about this. And then this whole thing moves to the vote in the parliament, in the plenary with all of the 751 members, and we try to figure out a majority to stop these negotiations, and we unfortunately didn't succeed. And here you can see all of the German members of the European Parliament, how they voted. So the CDU, all of them are in favor, of course, of upload filters and so on and so forth. With the Social Democrats here, it's a different picture. There's a bunch of people who have voted in favor of this as well. But, for example, one of the people who are strongly against upload filters is, for example, Timo Werken. Maybe some of you know him. He found a couple of votes with the Social Democrats who are against this. With the Greens, there it was 50-50. Julia Reda from the Pirates is also in that group, and she found a couple of people against this, but also one person who is very strictly in favor of upload filters, Helga Trüppel, is curiously also a Green, and therefore this was like 50-50.
Glaube ich 62, die dagegen gestimmt haben 45. Vielleicht auch ein bisschen eine Generationenfrage. Aber,
maybe it's a matter of generation, because all of the older people within the Greens have voted in favor of this, and all of the younger people have voted against.
Welche SPD-Leute anfangen, ihre eigene Gruppe aufzumachen.
In Germany, this would be unthinkable for the Social Democrats to start finding a couple of people to vote against things, but here this is normal. So unfortunately, this has passed. Some of you might remember this picture. This is Axel Voss, the rapporteur. He's very happy. I'm gonna start calling him now Mr. Upload Filter. And
ja, ist ein fieses Foto. Aber,
yeah, that's a really bad picture.
Dann war die Sache, hat er quasi, da hat er das Mandat bekommen. Und
but yeah, he got the mandate to start negotiations with the
die Schattenberichterstatterin für die Grünen, Reda,
and this is what's currently going on. So Julia Reda, she's the shadow rapporteur for the Green Group, tries to get some transparency into all of these discussions and publishes some files. So the thing is, once the trilogue is over, the whole file comes back into the European Parliament, because the plenary still has to accept this, and so there it will be important to find a majority against this. There were multiple millions of signatures on the petition to safeguard the internet that we know, and this is being endangered by upload filters. Upload filters are being put in place would mean that all of the content that is being uploaded onto platforms has to be scanned beforehand by some kind of filter. And for the moment, this is being discussed, as I said before, in this trilogue, and I would really hope that the net community would find a way to rally a lot of people against this, because this is a really tough fight, and it's also a dirty fight.
Der Kampf wird schmutzig geführt. von alle Seiten mit harten Bandagen, aber wir haben es da wirklich mit den Befürwortern auch, sagen wir mal,
it is really, really hard because the people in favor of this
also
are really
einfach hin und sagen,
far removed from facts. There are people that say, well, there won't be any upload filters, and that's simply not a basis for discussion because that's not true. So what I want to give you on the way for the elections, take a look at this. Don't listen too much to what they are telling you, what they're going to do in the future, but rather look at what they did in the past. For example, here.
Verfolgt die Medien, lasst euch nicht von
think about it, read, take care of the news, take in news. It's going to be very interesting how this is going to run down. Think about that there will not be a blocking 3% block for the election, so you might as well also vote for smaller parties. What I want to do some advertisement for the democratic ways of the European Parliament is that it is really easy or comparatively easy for small parties in the European Parliament to take part in the big discussions because it is they can lead discussions there. I would hope that this would also happen in Germany, for example. Just think about it, where we would have a government where a smaller partner in this government would be able to do those things that it wants to be known for politically, and doesn't simply have to agree to compromises. What I really like about the democratic structure in the European Parliament is that there is this negotiation between the Parliament and the Council, and you've seen before it's really, really hard for the Council to find these majorities, 65% and so on and so forth. And it's a really tough weight of the elected chamber of the European Parliament, and which has to play an important role against the Council there. Oftentimes it happens that some things are being blocked by the member states there. I don't want to make you any hope because unfortunately currently it seems like there is no strong movement in favor of European integration. But yeah, maybe vote on the right place next year in May. It might just be a small step, but thank you anyways.